Hi, my name is Kelly Wilbur, and I am one Catholic counselor. Nancy McWilliams wrote that psychoanalytic theory describes us all in two basic dimensions: how nuts we are and what type of nuts we are. In this group of videos, I'll quote liberally from her book, Psychoanalytic Diagnosis, and the PDM-2 to focus on that second dimension and discuss one personality type per video. Today I'll talk about paranoid personalities and address what characterizes them, how they develop, what they're like in therapy, and how to differentiate them from other personalities. First, what is a paranoid personality? McWilliams describes this psychology as being organized around dealing with one's own perceived negative qualities by disavowing them and projecting them, with the disowned attributes then feeling like external threats. The PDM-2 says the paranoid person's characteristic pathological belief about the self is, I am in constant danger, while the respective pathological belief about others is, the world is full of potential attackers and users. How does someone develop a paranoid personality? The four schools of psychoanalytic thought, drive, ego, object, and self-psychologies each have overlapping theories. From a more drive, affect, and temperament perspective, children with a natural disposition of high irritability or aggression may react to caregiver interventions by developing a persecutory view of the outside world. Fear of annihilation, shame of devalued aspects of the self, envy, and guilt are all additional parts of the paranoid experience. From an ego psychology perspective, paranoid personalities emerge from an overdependence on specific defenses we use to maintain ego equilibrium. In this case, projection, projective identification, denial, and reaction formation. Paranoid people deny parts of themselves that they find upsetting. When these individuals fall into the psychotic spectrum, pure projection is used to make these upsetting internal parts feel as if they are fully external. Less severe paranoid people utilize projective identification, where disowned attitudes about the self are projected in ways that subtly provoke others to actually feel those attitudes. Thus, paranoia becomes a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy. This, of course, reinforces paranoid feelings. Reaction formation is another strategy paranoid people use to protect themselves from their own feelings. In reaction formation, a person has an unconscious feeling and consciously expresses it in the form that is its exact opposite. For instance, if a paranoid person's earliest attachments were toxic and dangerous, that paranoid person may defend against the danger of later attachments by expressing unconscious love in the form of conscious hatred. From an object relations perspective, paranoid personalities can develop from a childhood where one feels repeatedly criticized, humiliated, overpowered, and subjected to capricious punishment. Another factor can be excessively anxious primary caregivers who respond to their children's problems with denial or catastrophizing, thus sowing seeds of fear, shame, and guilt in the place of empathy. This dynamic can breed bewilderment, helplessness, and estrangement. Subsequently, people emerging from this environment tend to believe that mistreatment is inevitable and may preemptively lash out at others in order to get the pain over with. From a self-psychology perspective, paranoid personalities possess both weak and omnipotent representations of the self. The weak side feeds both a terror of abuse and a feeling of contempt. The omnipotent side produces a side effect of guilt. In other words, if one is omnipotent, then one is guilty whenever anything goes wrong. Consequently, the grandiose omnipotence of a paranoid person can make them believe that somehow everything that happens has to do with them personally. What are paranoid personalities like in therapy? In therapy, a paranoid person's transference, or how they feel about the therapist, may be represented by their expectation that the therapist is trying to feel superior by exposing them, or has some other agenda unrelated to their well-being. The therapist's countertransference, or how the therapist feels in response to the client, can be aligned with the anxieties the client is defending against. For example, clients who use hostility to defend against fear may stimulate fear or hostility in the therapist. Typical psychoanalytic techniques of interpretation and analysis can backfire with paranoid people, making them feel judged or misunderstood. Instead, McWilliams suggests that therapists use non-belittling humor to model an authenticity that a paranoid client may have never experienced before. Additional suggestions on interventions include addressing the affect behind the paranoid defense, identifying with the events that trigger paranoia, making all interpretations tentative, using fantasy to model the difference between thoughts and actions, keeping consistent boundaries to avoid appearing manipulative, and being resilient to demonstrate that the client's feelings cannot destroy the therapist. You can differentiate paranoid persons from other personalities in the following ways. Paranoid and psychopathic personalities both possess elements of power. However, paranoid persons operate on a guilt that psychopaths do not have. Also, paranoid persons, unlike psychopaths, possess a deep loyalty and generosity to people who share their values. Paranoid and obsessive personalities both may have a rigid sensitivity to justice and rules. However, paranoid people use this as a defense against humiliation or physical harm, while obsessive people use this as a defense to maintain control. I hope this provides a general understanding of what paranoid personalities are, how they develop, what they're like in therapy, and how to differentiate them from other personalities. Thank you for watching, and please be sure to look for my videos describing the other personality character structures.